Hello everybody. Today Sylvie and I are in the village of Ashton, which is right up in the northwest corner of Essex, close to the Cambridgeshire border. And we're going to take quite a long walk today, and we're hopefully going to take in 3 villages. And the focus of this walk is basically on 3 specific buildings, 2 with ancient historical significance and 1 with more recent historical quirkiness, and that's one that Sylvie's desperate to look at. But this is one of the buildings that I want us to look at. This is All Saints Church here in the village of Ashton, and it does have one unsubstantiated claim to historical fame. Now, you know the story about Henry VIII and his 6 wives. Well, after he got shot of his first wife, Catherine of Aragon, he set his sights on Anne Boleyn, much to the annoyance of the Roman Catholic Church, as we all know. And but in defiance of the Church, he betrothed himself to Anne Boleyn. And in 1532, he's believed to have secretly married her, right here in this church. But he did get officially married in the following year, 1533. Interesting. But why on earth he came all the way out here just to get secretly married? I don't know. Anyway, before we set off on the walks, I want to show you something. Sylvie has got this James Bond type gadget on her wrist. Now that is linked to GPS. Now that tells you how many steps you've done, and also equates to how many miles you've walked, how many calories you've burned, and more importantly, how many pints of beer you need to drink afterwards in order to rehydrate. So this one's going to be interesting in itself. Anyway, we're going to set off on our walk now. This old building is the old medieval guild hall, which was built over 600 years ago. Another significant building in Ashton is the Crown Public House. Oliver Cromwell was known to have stayed here on several occasions. We're starting our walk from the old guild hall in the churchyard. We then head southwest on the Walden Road. About half a mile from the village, we turn right down a little lane which only leads to a farm. It's one hell of a hedge. Wow. At this point we take a left turn off the lane through these nurseries and onto a country path. The path goes for about half a mile and then eventually comes to a place called Butler's Farm. We take a right turn here and head up an old trackway. A few hundred yards up the track we turn left and head in a westerly direction towards the hamlet of Little Walden. We can eventually see Little Walden in the valley below. The path then takes us through a wooded area beside a stream. We finally arrive in Little Walden. We pass the Crown Public House and onto the village green. Here Sylvie and I take a little break. suitably refreshed, we then set off on the next leg of our walk. Sylvie stopped to smell the sweet fragrance of some honeysuckle. The road takes us up a hill towards the site of the old World War II airfield of RAF Little Walden. The airfield was constructed in 1943 and opened in March 1944, and it became home to the 409th Bomb Group, flying Havocs and Invader light bombers. Some of the original buildings still exist, so Sylvie and I take a detour to have a look. This building looks like an original hangar that's been reclad at some point. It's now being used as a haulage depot. But this is the building Sylvie wanted to look at. It's the old control tower that still exists, and it was featured on the BBC's Escape to the Country property programme a few years ago, and the person who bought it then transformed it into a modern stylish home, and it was recently valued at almost £800,000. There are other large hangar-like buildings on the airfield, but I'm not sure if they're original. As we leave the airfield, we can get a splendid view of Cambridgeshire across the valley. A short distance down the hill and we come to the village of Hadstock. The last building we wanted to look at is St Botolph's Church, which has a history going back 1400 years. St Botolph built a monastery here in 654 AD, and he's believed to be buried here. It was destroyed by the Danes 200 years later. King Canute rebuilt the church in commemoration of those killed at the Battle of Ashdon in 1016. Also of historical interest is the door here, which was built in the year 1020. The door now is 1,000 years old and is the oldest door still in use in Great Britain. An old story passed down through the ages was when a Dane was caught trying to steal the church silverware. He was dragged outside and skinned alive. His skin was then nailed to the door. When the door was taken down for restoration some years ago, a piece of human skin was found tucked behind one of the door hinges, and this is now on display in Little Walden Museum. It's also worth noting that the church was built on a meeting point of 16 ley lines. Well, it looks like Sylvie's found one of the ley lines. I don't think laying down is what it means, Sylv. Sylvie and I set off on the return journey to Ashton, and we're taking the footpath from the churchyard. We walk for almost a mile before we reach an orchard at a place called Little Bowser's. It seems they keep humpless camels here, or maybe they're llamas. Well, we just got over the fence, and well, that's one hell of a place to put your garden shed, isn't it? Oh, is that what it is? Trust you to spoil the joke. Okay then. Carry on the footpath. They're walking underneath this massive tree there. That's one hell of a outdoor activity centre for kids. It's got swings on it and everything. Wow. Makes you want to be a kid again. After another mile and a half, we can finally see Ashton. Well, we finally made it back to Ashton. We've been walking for over 7 hours, so it's quite a distance we've walked. It'll be interesting to see what Sylvie's James Bond gadget says. Anyway, heading for home now. Sylvie's all worn out, she sat in the car. Anyway, I hope Henry enjoyed his wedding night, both of them. Before we leave the village, Sylvie and I stopped to take a look at Ashton Windmill, which was built in the 1750s. Right, Sylvie's just check what the James Bond gadget says. Right.
25,000 steps.
Yeah.
981 calories.
Yeah.
10.15 miles.
Right. What's the best bit? No.
4 pints of beer.
What? Is that between us?
No.
Hey?
Just for me. You can get your own.
Charming. We better stop at a shop somewhere then. Oh.